Welcome to a new episode of the Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as a couple of our most recent, Maneuvering with Neutrality and Alignment during this next wave of unfoldments, and Deprogram Clearing Empowerment Workshop. You could also join us in our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As the more of us coming together and creating a shift in oneself, the more effective it'll be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series. This is a series that expands who you are in a very powerful way by accessing more of your capacities, more of your capabilities, and to become a grander aspect of what you came here to be and to experience. Now, we're here, of course, to play together, to expand together, and so forth, and you have chosen to be part of it. So welcome to the Advancing Consciousness series. This is episode 44, and today we're going to be looking at a deeper look at our human design, capabilities, and origin. The reason we're covering this because we underestimate in a huge way our human experience, our human presence, our human capacities, and human capabilities, and why we even came here to express it and experience it in such a powerful way. We get lost in the game and we put aside and make ourselves so small, so insignificant when it comes to the game that we're so lost in the game. Now, there's a perfection in that. However, part of the perfection is to go outside of that range, to go and access more of it. This is part of the consciousness awareness and awakening that we're all receiving at one point or another, at one level or another, depending on our readiness. Now, all of us will gain perspective and expansion and so forth. It depends on the degree and your readiness. Now, the readiness does not need to be caught up in the idea you're ready and not ready or anything of that nature. No. What we're talking about when we're talking about readiness, it is completing what parts it wanted to complete, meaning you, what you wanted to complete, what you wanted to experience up to this point in time, and now to move forward. Now, of course, right now we're in an acceleration of movement forward in a big, powerful way where we're using more of our consciousness, using more of our capabilities, and really not only shaping ourselves, reshaping, redesigning, reactivating certain parts of ourselves, but we're also doing this on Gaia, planet Earth, playground, so-called, and we're doing this collectively in a very powerful way. Of course, each one of us are in different stages. Each one of us are playing different roles because each one of us is a piece of the puzzle. As being a piece of the puzzle is a very significant component because the thing is, each piece is important to complete what it needs to be completed. Now, of course, each part or parcel or whatever part that it goes, it will leave its imprint and move on. This is why we're coming and going all the time. Of course, the puzzle has gone through a major upgrade, and also all the pieces, being all of us here, have gone through these upgrades also. This is all beautifully, powerfully orchestrated in such a powerful way. And here we are. So we're going to take a deeper look today. And just to thank everybody for your assistance and so forth and your contributions, and also for being part of the workshop. And if you didn't, if you missed out the last workshop, which was just about 9 days ago or so, something like that, We have it in the links in the description, the links to be able to get the video and audio recordings. The main recording has already been sent out. The broken down parts will go out either today or tomorrow as completed, which you'll get video and audio recordings. In addition to all of that, right now at this point in time, we're also open to bring more forth in the essence of capacities for yourselves. So we do also have we also have links to take you to other workshops that we have. If you've already seen the one we just had and want to check out some of the other ones too. You were going to say something, Kimberly?
Oh, I was just going to say that our internet is spotty today. Like it's a bit low, so we may get some, interruptions here and there. Nothing we can really do about it at this time. And you may want to explain your shirt to the people.
Yes, I'm going to get to that. So yes, so as Kimberly said, the internet, plus we've had some issues with YouTube where we kept posting and it wasn't working. So we are not quite sure what the ordeal was or the whole issue was with that. And if some of you came on, you saw that the picture didn't show up again. For whatever reason, I will correct it later. I've attempted several times. It just wasn't working today. It's been quite a little exercise to get on to be able to do this episode. So it must be really powerful and expansive, and you guys made it happen so that it came together, even though there was a lot of back-end work. So today I figured, because of some of the things we're going to be playing with today, I'm going to end up using words that may not be in the dictionary, or what we call the Webster Dictionary, other people's dictionaries. And plus, over several of the episodes and a lot of my different workshops and over the years, I've been making up words along the way. And the reason I make up words is because of the fact that, I'm trying to express something that there's not a word quite for it. So anyways, we just had a recent little gathering at our place, and then some people had come over, some really close friends, and we got to spend some time. And surprising to me that they decided to make t-shirts. And with the t-shirts, I will show on the back, it's talking about this new version of dictionary. And this dictionary has a lot of Franco words. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
It's the Franco Di Nicola Dictionary. It's all your Franco-isms that you've been using. We've collected over time, a bunch of us, and thought it would be cool to put them on a t-shirt and surprise you. So
yes. So it definitely was a surprise. In fact, when they surprised me with it, that they were all in the kitchen there, and when I came down, I didn't see, I didn't even pay attention to it at first, that everybody was wearing different t-shirts with different words, of course, until a few minutes later that I started communicating with Kimberly, that I noticed that she had this t-shirt with one of the words that I've used before. And then as I looked around in the room, there were everybody was wearing different words with different definitions also accordingly. So anyways, I felt it was appropriate today to share it because of a lot of other words I'm going to be throwing in, possibly ones I've used before, but at the same time. So this one here was the latest one, and so they decided to make sure that I get this one. Analogically, which is basically, I was talking about being from digital to analog in the, I think it was the last episode or something like that. So, so when that happened, they did say, okay, great, we have another new word to play with. So anyways, that's about the t-shirt and the Franco Di Nicola Dictionary. So you'll probably end up having some other words to get to play with. Was there anything else you wanted to say, or we're all good? All right, so let's get to play. Let's get to play some more. Get my little trusty pen. At some point I'll master all of this. So on the last episode, of course, we had this beautiful little drawing here. We were talking about the different primary contributors that make this physicality, which made it quite unique. So I just wanted to look at it again. So we're looking at our main contributor, the primary. That means it takes the main is the Pleiadian, the Sirian, Arcturian, Lemurian, and Reptilian, which are basically their genetic encodements and their patterned, because every physical form are spectrums of light using certain frequencies and codes to represent itself. So each one of these species contribute to create a poopery, which was another word, potpourri, but poopery of combinations to create this physicality. And these were the secondaries that we had, and then the additional contributors for certain individuals that have taken on a particular task and needed to harness a specific soul that may have been here to play a particular role that required the extra encodements to be able to harness that. So anyways, that's that, but we're going to get to play with what we're looking at, a deeper look at our human design, capabilities, and origins. So the reason we're taking a closer look at this is that the fact of the human design, when we're looking at it, it is a design. Okay, a lot of people say creator, the creator created us. And that in some way, somehow, that, it was something magical. In a way, you can look at it that way or whatever it is. But each and every expression, each and every planet, solar system, galaxy, universe is all within the field. And all of it is designed to create. It's like a video game. You will create the game out of using electronics and electrical charge or electrical movement through instructions and codements in different ways to create capacities to be able to see the video game, to express and experience ourselves playing the video game with the controls and so forth. So everything else is designed exactly the same, different type of electronics, if you want to call it that, because it doesn't utilize the same level of electronics that we utilize as in the video game, but it is actually that. So when we're looking at it, this physical body and all the bodies that were here before on Gaia, and every single physicalities that exist on all the different planets that exist within, not only in our solar system, the galaxies, the universes, and so forth, were all designed and created. How were they designed? They were designed by aspects of ourselves that have evolved and had learned how to create other sub-creations. And when I say sub-creation, extended creations would be the better word for it, because in fact, we're not talking about creations less than. Every creation uses the same elements, the same energy involved, the same encodements. They're just changed and designed. It's like anything else. Every software requires the zeros and ones and whatever else that create it. Now certain combinations and so forth end up creating a certain reality or certain display on your computer or whatever you want to play with. And this is the same reflection when it comes to source creation. So it's all coming from source, but it's all source itself. Now, what happens is original creations that came about learned and expanded and created other and more elaborate playgrounds. And of course, the playgrounds are always upgrading. Everything is upgrading, even the experiencer, which is source itself, but also aspects of these fragmented, what looks like fragmented expressions. That is always constantly upgrading, and as it upgrades, as it's moving forward in those upgrades, it's giving the opportunity to use more of its resources to create other playgrounds. So when we talk about the grand explosion, or is that what they call it in, the Big Bang? Yes, thank you, that's the word. the Big Bang. Well, really what took place is with a very gradual expansion of creating more and more playgrounds, more and more recipient playmates and so forth within each of these playgrounds. So all of the planets and solar systems and different galaxies and universes and so forth, this is before we even went into creating parallel ones, but going into each one was created at some point or another. Now, many aspects of ourselves, especially in the soul capacities that have been around and have been involved in design, just continued to designing. So the expansion was creating more and more playgrounds. Now, of course, the playgrounds became more elaborate each time, but at the same time, a lot of the playgrounds would get retooled and redesigned and so forth. And same thing with the physicalities. The physicalities were not in the original, not ourselves or any other of our being brother, sister souls that are in physical form. Those forms kept upgrading. Their planets have upgraded at different times. You know, we talk about retooling and reseeding. So all of that is constantly taking place, and it always has taken place. So when we're talking about our human design, as I've talked about it in the past, in 15,000 years ago, the planet came up as an opportunity to be retooled, and to retool it, of course, reseed it, bringing different plant life, different sentient beings, let's call it that. And then, of course, to experience all of that, they wanted to create a new physical form, and this physical form was going to use the highest of technology and knowledge and capacities and experimentations and so forth, and decided to plug in a variety. Now, as I've said before, planet Earth it has a difference in the fact that it has the most variance of sentient beings versus a lot of other planets. Where this planet here, when we're looking at it, in this last retooling, decided to put, the engineers, the designers decided to plug in a lot of different variants. And that would serve us in a very, very powerful way, because now we were now having many, many streams of feedback, and also access points to consciousness and whatever else, and a sharing of that consciousness with all of our sentient beings on the planet, including what we call Gaia, the planet, the playground. So when our bodies were designed, of course, it was designed with what I was showing you, the different 12 species and so forth, blended and so forth. So it was designed with a very specific purpose. And this is the key we have to understand, that each creation has a purpose, and each creation is a piece of the puzzle of that. See, because if you look at it, we're a piece of the puzzle of planet Earth. Planet Earth, a piece of the puzzle of the solar system. The solar system is a piece of the puzzle of the galaxy, and the galaxy itself is connected to the other three quadrants of the galaxy, and then beyond. And then, of course, the galaxies are a piece of the puzzle of what we call the universe. And then, of course, the universes are interconnected and are also pieces of the puzzle of sourceness itself. And, of course, there's multiple versions of them that exist. Now, then, of course, the other part that was introduced, which was creating an alternate version of it, or in this case, I used the word before, I can't even think of it right now, but at the same time, an alternate version of it that, had slightly different encodements, similar physical expressions and so forth, but also giving the opportunity to plug in different spins of access to create different parallel worlds. And that's what we call parallel worlds, parallel solar system, parallel galaxies and universes and so forth. So they're similar but not totally, because different parts were utilized as part of the expression. So here we are in these physical forms. And these physical forms were designed. A lot of people would say, we don't take that from God, but who are we? We are all that, okay? If we're source, we're source. We're having different expressions that may not represent what source is, but then how many of us even give ourselves the opportunity to even access what source is? And when I say that, meaning stepping into source state 100%, because once you're in source state 100%, as source in that state, you're not creating form or expressions and so forth. Now, that's why source has created two channels of itself, and basically the observer and the creator creates and observes itself, and so forth. And this is, we are part of what we're in form on this particular playground as the part that has taken on form, and it is expressing and advancing accordingly. So our brother-sister souls as a team from a parallel world or a parallel universe that already had achieved certain parts of it decided, hey, we're going to come here and we're going to create something that we've already been able to do, but in essence, we're going to do it next level up. That's all. Next level up, meaning introducing different things that haven't been tried. And that gave us the opportunity. So when our bodies were made, they were made in a lab, if you want to call it that. And when we're talking about even a lab, we're talking about a constructing capacities that is hard to explain in human mind because those type of designs are slightly different. We're using the seed codes of all the different species that I had showed you earlier and that I talked a little bit more about in the last episode. So we were designed, absolutely. We were designed, and our capabilities are phenomenal in comparison to anything that we have even attempted to experience at this point in time. Because we've been playing at those levels, much lower levels, much more disconnected state, and of course we went into the inverted matrix, inverted 3D and 2D, that accessibility through a smoke screen sort of thing or an illusionary barrier, our access to capacity became tremendously minimal to the point where we use almost none of it, in a sense. I'm not saying none because you can't, or else you wouldn't exist. But we use a very small amount. And now, of course, people, as you're awakening and shifting your consciousness and accessing more, your capabilities are increasing. Now, I know a lot of people talk about different capabilities and so forth, which I will cover as we go along. And then our origin, which I just covered. And, our origin is from source. We're all from source. Every single part of us. So our body's from source. Our human entities from source. Our souls are from source. Our planet, everything is from source. But the beauty of it? There's no from. It's part of it. It's inclusive. It's it. You're in it. That's the thing. So when people say, where is source? The better question is, where is it not? Because it cannot. Without source, there is no existence. There is no of what we're experiencing and have experienced on different playgrounds. Now, of course, all of us have been on different planets, in different form, in different expressions, in different ways of playing the game of life. It's not minimized to just this. This is only a small part of it. And this is just one drop-in, if you want to call it that, one visitation, one experience. But we don't minimize your purpose of here because you came here quite skilled and prepared. Now we have to understand that every part is evolving, every part is expanding and so forth. And we're not even talking about in the sense of evolutionary from what, Darwin and others have talked about and whatever. Evolution, we're not talking about that. We're talking about when we've gone through these upgrades and expressions and so forth, it's a complete redesign. And the thing is, we are on an open platform where everything is upgrading and modifying at the same time. So it's an open platform where it receives, so it's not stagnant in any way. So form. Now, even though how we played the game and expressed ourselves and minimized ourselves, it looks like that we're locked up. It looks like that we haven't made any changes, but we have. We just utilized a very small amount, and some have started to use it more and more along the way. So Let's take a look at some of that. One of the things it does really well with, it has self-repair. Now, yes, is that super unique? In a way, it's not. But the thing is, the self-repair doesn't matter how much damage you went into, it repairs itself. Now, in its original design, and once that gets reactivated more thoroughly, the repairs more extensively. Now, of course, we see ourselves getting wounded or go through breakages and so forth in our body, and the body repairs itself to the best it can. Now, of course, the body is also exposed to a lot of different encodements that give it confused instructions. And then, of course, we're taking in what we call toxicity. And what is toxicity? Toxicities are codes and elemental energy pulses or pockets of information that are not aligned with our bodies. That means that the body is being exposed to it or introduced to it, but it does not match. It's a misalignment, but it also is codes that will actually create sort of a virus of sorts that break down or create malfunctionality to the original programming that's already existing. So when the body's going through detox, what is it doing? It's actually letting go of those codes, those energies, pockets of informations, and different encoded fragmented spectrums of light. So that's what's going on. Now, of course, we've been exposed to a tremendous amount of what we call toxins or codes that are not super conducive in any way, shape, or form. Now, of course, it alters our functionality and it gives us a completely different experience. If you're looking at it in its total wide open viewpoint, say, okay, great, malfunction is actually an experience too, or the fact that there's a modification that occurs that the body does not any longer work in its original design or original blueprint or anything of that nature. Now, of course, as we're going along, what's happening is that even though we went into a dormant, turned off state, more and more of our body is being reactivated back to its original, which bypasses a lot of the junk codes, if you want to call it that, as for loose words, junk codes that the body has internalized and utilized for a period of time and kind of had to deal with it, and also created certain alterations to the body functionality. And we're talking about what we represent as organs and different elemental components of our physical form. So with all of that, with the energies that are coming in, all the different upgrades that we've been receiving, that we're being restored back to those codes, because those codes have not been, some of it have been manipulated to some degree, but it's going through the process of being restored, and all of the junk codes are being purged out, including all the other stuff I've been talking about, purged out. But also, artificial intelligent created chemistry sort of thing, where it was created through emotional charge, which I'll, briefly talk about that later. But, at the same time, all of this is taking place. So we're going through that so that the self-repair gets even more extensively. Now, when we're talking about self-repair, if a certain part falls off or breaks off or whatever, it repairs much more quickly, because right now there's a huge delay. There's a lot of requirements of codes and support and so forth before it actually starts any repair process, because of, first of all, the onslaught of different codes and frequencies and so forth that are taking place at this time, including electromagnetic frequencies and so forth. All of that is coming in at the same time that it is really slowing things down. So really, we repair very quickly, and it does not require. Now, you've seen examples, possibly not in real life, but in certain experiments, they thought if they can keep a physical form in a more pristine state and not being basically detoxed, or having no toxins, and not being exposed to different fragmented frequencies that are being bombarded, in an isolated capacity, their healing process, even from a scar, would be a lot quicker, and it's actually a lot more efficient because it restores to a point where you can't even tell there was one there, because that not always does not always happen at this time, depending on the severity of the scar and so forth. The other thing is that we can actually regrow limbs and parts and so forth. So, you know, if we're rebuilding all the time. Like every organ, every part of us is regenerating. Now the thing is, because of the mixed up codes that are existing, the regeneration is kind of duplicating the older, modified, or taken out of its order state. So the thing is, the bodies are repairing. So what happens with all of this as we're going through the changes, we'll be able to repair it with its true natural design and not be interfered in any way from the old way, where all these other junk codes, so-called, that would interfere in its repair. So even growing back a limb is not unusual. It can do it very easily in its natural design. The capacities to restore an organ back to its original design versus creating more of a faulty version, because I mean, we're always regenerating. But the regeneration process will also vary depending on the different organs in your body and the different states of your body, because some parts will regenerate quicker. Now that already exists to a certain degree, but it actually gets more refined and fine-tuned along the way. So this is some of the things that we're going. So it has the capacities to self-repair, and a lot of times the repair actually creates even a better version of itself. When I'm talking about that, we're talking about the self-repair will actually add additional information and encodements of what, say, what the body originally had there in that point. You've probably heard it where somebody breaks a bone or something of that nature, and then it rebuilds itself even stronger. You were going to say something.
Did you also mention it would depend on the person's programs that they're carrying and the thoughts that they're thinking, the self-repair?
No,
Yeah,
not yet.
so-
No. Maybe you want to cover that?
No.
Okay. No, that's good. Thank you. So, anyways, that's the repair becomes even much more upgraded, because the repair will actually take the higher version of it. Now, of course, we're only using a small portion of that. We're not using it fully. A lot of people that actually do weightlifting and so forth, what happens, their body structure starts to change to compensate the strains that it's going on. The tears actually repair. Now that's an inefficient way of doing it, but in a way, in its true design, it actually modifies modifies and adjusts itself much more effectively, and without the requirements of the work that we have to go through most of the time to make that happen in that fashion. And as Kimberly had said, that the repair itself has one other factor, and that factor has to do with your state, okay? Now, it doesn't mean the state that you're living in when we're talking about countries, but we're talking about the state of being, your thoughts, how you feel, what you feel about yourself, where your focus and energy is, how you actually see your representation of yourself on this playground at this point in time, in the sense of your so-called perceptual value and so forth. So what happens is, not only, for example, if you're not feeling good about yourself, you're going to be creating and consuming and exposing yourself to things that are not agreeable to the body, does not match the frequency that the body is looking for to be able to create a sustainable aspects of its expression and playfulness, but also your state. Now, there's another part to that. So how you feel and how you experience your life very much directly affects your repair capacities. The other part of it is that the repair can be slowed down, dwarfed by belief systems. If we believe that we're damaged and that we can't repair any longer, if we put a lot of energy and focus on that, that impedes, and it's actually a part of the junk information that we activate from our mind. Now, of course, that's going to be directly coming from the ego's idea and the perceived ideas that it's had in the past, that, you know, we can't repair ourselves, or the fact that I'm going to be with a bruise, I'm going to be with a scar, and it's going to take 10 years to repair, or 1 year, 1 month, one hour, whatever, right? It's the belief systems attached to that too. The other part of it that comes into play is that a repair can be also delayed to give you the opportunity to have an intense experience to get your attention, because it may want to show you that you're exposing yourself to things that are not conducive to it, that it's done with. It may show you that you're in a stuck pattern. It may also show certain programs for you and so forth. So the physical expression can alter and be part of something that is going to support you in one way or another to also be able to get rid of and shift your state of being. So all of that are interconnected in itself. So as much as we have the capacities to be able to do this in a very powerful way, you know, there are certain factors. Now, of course, our energies are changing, our state of being, our excitement of life is changing. We're also expressing and experiencing ourselves in a much more clear way, because we're seeing ourselves grander than what our accumulation of our experience has been up to this point in time. The other thing is too, we're also being exposed to other aspects of energies and other aspects of ourselves that are supporting something that matches a little more. So what we're doing is we're putting more of our focus and attention at this point in time in creating those changes within ourselves, so that our body is actually upgrading, and that's what we're doing. Now, I know we talked about going from carbon to silicate to crystal. You know, that again, will also be conducive in one way or another through the repairing process. But in essence, it plays a very powerful role. All of it plays a very powerful role. So this is huge for what we can experience and do, but at the same time, there's a lot of factors that we can utilize. Now, this is not unique, because the thing is, if any of you remember, but even if you don't, from other planets, other beings, they have the capacities to repair also. It just doesn't have such a process that we have. We adopted the idea and belief that we need to go to medical doctors and we have to go to hospitals and we got to do all of that stuff, which, until we shifted from that, that intervention, which is just a game or a play, becomes a factor to stimulate the repair. How many of us have felt that once somebody said, oh, you're okay, it's going to get better, that the repair processes that was happening within our body accelerated. So it didn't need to prolong. But while we were in that worried state, that little infection that you had in your mouth or any place else, seems to take forever, and it just continues to morph and continues to expand. It continues to do a lot of different things, because we're still in the strong belief or afraid. Because a lot of times what happens, fear plays a very big role in this, in the impeding. Oops. Maybe I shouldn't do it up there. Oh well. So I'm going to put it here. Oops. Fear. So fear itself does also impede the repair process, because if we're afraid something bad is going to happen to us, then that's going to be used as an opportunity to say, okay, then we better hold on to this until we can drop the fear. And at the same time, the fear has a very low vibration, which alters the chemistry and the adjustments that the body would normally go to rebuild or repair itself. So if you've noticed, the more fear you have about something, the more it lingers, the malfunction, the ailment, or anything of that nature. because you're afraid. Now, of course, fear has many, many sides to it. There's the fear of death, the fear of what it's going to look like, the fear that you'll never get better, the fear that you're going to be judged. I mean, there's lots of different fears, all related to your physical expression part. Oh well, it's doing something, and it actually goes with the day because today's been interesting on so many levels. Okay, you were going to say something.
Excuse me. Yes. AA is asking, what is the efficient way to do the repair in this? The same as as being in alignment with all your bodies.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, the thing is, the most efficient way to do any of this repair work within ourselves is to be in a state where we are very much so in alignment with ourselves. So, feeling good about yourself, feeling that a lot of the things that we've expressed and experienced in our life at this point in time, we don't have an issue with. We don't have stories, programs, and so forth. So each and every story program, and this is the thing, and I did talk about it in the workshop. So if you weren't on the workshop, I would suggest to get it because we talked about the health part too. But at this point, what we're looking at in the physical form is that if we're getting caught up in our stories and programs and belief systems and fears, like I was saying, you want to write down everything that's coming up because of whatever you're at. Now, you may have an ailment, okay? What is that ailment bringing up? It may bring up fear. What are you afraid of? So you want to write all that stuff down. This is where the writing comes in very effectively. Write down what the fears are. Write down any stories that come up. This happened to me before and it took 2 months to recover, 2 years to recover. Or that my friend did this or my family member did this and they took a long time to recover, or anything of that nature. So you want to look at all those stories. You want to write out what those stories are because they do play a role for you when you want to look at getting much more efficient. The most efficient state is in flow, being present. Even the fact that you may have an ailment, be present with the ailment. And when I say with that, or pain, or whatever it may be, don't deny it, don't fight it, don't judge it, don't label it, don't see it as anything, but see it as a sensorial experience or something that is providing you a particular experience that without it, you wouldn't be able to have it. So be present with that, accept it, acknowledge its presence, acknowledge what it's doing for you, because this is the thing, it's not only its presence, but what it's doing for you. How is it serving you? And I know it's easy for the ego to get involved and judge the experience and saying, well, this is a bad thing because I did this or that, whatever it is. You don't want to get caught up with that. So you want to kind of let those parts go. But anyways, write it into it, and you want to get rid of those labels around it. So you acknowledge its presence, acknowledge how it served you, acknowledge how without it, how it would look like. And that's also required for you to write it out so that you have different versions of it. Then once you've acknowledged all of that, you want to go into a deep appreciation for its creation, for its existence. Now, one of the things that's very powerful is never seeing a creation outside of ourselves and never see the creation as a mistake. Okay? People do this all the time. I have this in my life because I was thinking wrong, I was doing this wrong, whatever it is. Or the fact that, something outside of me brought it in, or the fact that, I don't have any control with that. That's not the truth. If we have that belief, we want to write that down too and go through the process of letting that go. Again, you're going to appreciate, you acknowledge it, appreciate it, love it, and then you can let it free. And when you're letting it free, you're not going to have any judgment about it. You're not going to try to push it out the window sort of thing in the sense of, okay, I got to get rid of this. No, you're letting it free because of the fact it no longer serves you. Now, I know people can easily get caught up in the idea what it no longer serves, what it can represent, because, no longer serving at this point in time could represent many, many different things because of the fact that you say, well, it doesn't serve me because I've had this in my life or whatever it is. And that kind of doesn't make it as efficient. So by allowing yourself to observe all of these things and see that is a perfect creation, and that the creation gave you a certain experience, then it actually, you step into an empowered state. So you're not disempowered, and then whatever's there is more empowered than you. It doesn't work that way. I mean, yes, we adopt the idea, we play with it, we experience it, which is a great experience too, but at some point you're going to realize, hey, I'm the one that's empowered here, and I can decide what I want as part of my experience or not. And that's how you get to utilize all of that as you're going along. So this is some of the things that I wanted to share around that, because that topic alone, just the fact of the self-repair part, can get quite deep.
She's asking, it's like decoding the beliefs.
Yes. The thing is, you're basically purging beliefs. You're letting go of the beliefs, because the belief is this will not repair itself, or whatever it is. The belief that, this is why we're talking about a good point there, Kimberly, about the beliefs that I shared, because you want to drop all of those beliefs. The beliefs that it takes forever, the belief that I'm damaged goods, a belief, whatever it is, right? Now, you have to be okay with what the body will do, and eventually it will improve it along the way, because, a lot of times we make agreements with certain people that we want to hold on to a certain experience or pattern, because it's still part of the energy of the people that we're playing with. Could be family members at this point in time, because they have a lot of a belief that, that is associated with the belief that you have. So you want to drop the beliefs, you want to get rid of all of that, and you want to get to the crystal clear, knowing, because once you tune into yourself and even talking to the innate capacity or an innate consciousness of your body, you can have a dialogue with the body and instruct it and say, okay, listen, okay, great experience and so forth. Do we need to have any part of it? What do we need to do? Do you need any external assistance from my end? Which sometimes could be that you may need certain things that will harness a certain frequency that may require to be re-triggered within yourself, or the fact that maybe an adjustment in something where you're consuming that it's actually causing it a challenge to deal with. So you're taking the workload out of your body by not giving it what we call toxins, or things that it cannot consume. Now, toxins can be also related to the fact that you may consume something. I'm just going to use that as an example, that other people consume and they have no problem with, but for you, it ends up toxic, because that particular vibration of food or whatever that you're ingesting does not match with your body. Your body may have matched at one point, but it may not match now. So you have to honor and respect that the body is changing, and so you're going to pay attention to what you're introducing and exposing yourself, and be able to adjust accordingly so that you're always in alignment. And that will all speed up the process of what we call the self-recovery, self-repair, and so forth. Okay, I won't go any further than that right now. Okay, this is where I throw in some words. They might be inexistent. First one is adaptabilities.
I think
That's a word? Yeah. Good. Okay. Adaptabilities. Because it didn't show up on my, the computer didn't like it. What are you talking about?
I'll have to look it up.
Okay. And of course I split that up because it kept showing it as red. Adaptabilities. Adaptabilities and adaptabilities. Okay. What does that mean? We've gotten to a point where our physical form can adapt and adopt different ways of being, different representations. Our body can adapt and adopt ways of life and how it responds, how it feels, where it puts its preference in, and so forth. See, the thing is, in my observation and a lot of the input that my soul is streaming right now from this point, most physicalities that are on other planes do not have the same capacity of adaptability or adoptability of a certain way of expression and what's the word? I'm trying to think of the word. Not only expression, but way of being, for example, or representative in the physical form per se. So when we're looking at it, there's a level of uniqueness that is available for us, within us, when it comes to the capacities of adaptabilities and adoptabilities, which is not that common in other forms. The other thing is that it also has the abilities to adjust itself to the environment. Now, I know we've taken on a certain course where we've created what we would consider more of a hostile environment in comparison to its original design and to the physical original design. So we're now induced into what we call lots of levels of toxins and elements that are not, or frequencies that are not supportive to the original design, to our physical's true design. Okay? And what the body has done is adopted and adapted to whatever it's been exposed to, and to be able to utilize it and still be able to be in a state of functionality. It replicates what you call a chameleon aspect. For example, our bodies are not designed to eat anything besides fruit. We don't have the chemistry, we don't have the system to be able to break it down. Anything besides fruit, that carries the frequency and vibration that matches our true body design, even today. Now, of course, fruit is not its an original design either because of its exposure, so it's not in its truest form. You can find in certain areas that are not exposed to different exposures of different frequencies and different chemicals or whatever you want to call it, then it's more in its natural or closer to its natural state, but there's nothing in its natural state any longer. However, the fruit itself, the way it communicates with your body, it actually has the least amount of resistance at this point in time, and is also very nurturing to the physicality because it brings certain energies that it's also taking from the sunlight that's upgrading. It's also taking it from the air that is also changing, the water that is also restructuring, and what Gaia has to offer. Now, we do that already ourselves, but just bringing that version of it is very, very conducive. Now, what I talked about, the adoptability and adaptability, well, of course, certain other things were introduced. And I know some people may argue with this, and that's okay. I'm not here to argue. I'm just sharing the information. You do whatever you want with it. The fact that we are consuming other animal products and fish and so forth, other sentient beings, for example, and we're talking about sentient beings that have a little bit more match of our chemistry or design, like the animal kingdom, the oceanic kingdom, the birds, and the reptiles and so forth. The body was never designed to do that. It was never designed to take those elements into our body and actually turn it into something that the body can actually use to repair. Not in its original design. So it had to adopt and had to adapt. For example, this whole idea of protein, our body needs protein. Well, the body needs very minimal amount of protein. However, the protein that the body uses is not coming from animal protein or any other forms of protein. Because the body had to adapt and create codes and be able to, and also alter its chemistry, which is a huge load on the physicality anyways. Codes and capacities and capabilities as part of the adapting and adoption are the capacities to be able to take those elements and break it down to amino acids, and then the amino acids will be reused to create building structures, or what represents as building structures in the physical form. And that's just bringing it to its core. So the thing is, the body had to adapt and adopt the idea of being exposed to grains and being exposed to dairies and exposed to meats and fishes and birds and whatever else at this point in time, and to be able to use that as an energy source, which is basically another concept and belief system that was plugged in with, but it's not our natural state. So this is how it's been able to. Now, of course, that altered the way we feel, how we see things, how our body functions. It has weighed down the physicality in a sense where it represents itself in different forms. It's created a lot of what looks like imbalances, but which is expressed in experiences imbalances because of having these foreign materials, foreign elements that are still part from source. Of course, everything is source, but it was never encoded to be utilized at this point in time. I'm just giving you an example of some of the adaptability and adoptability. It adopts to other people and adaptability to other people. So wherever the environment is, you can notice if you go from one environment to another, after a short while, the body adapts to the environment, adapts to the temperatures, the humidity, and whatever else. Now, there may be some levels of resistance, and sometimes it takes a little longer because of the level of toxins or whatever else that we are already experiencing within ourselves. So our bodies will adapt and adopt accordingly to match. And of course, we see that it also adapts and adopts with the seasons that change, as we, especially depending on where you're living, if further south and further north of the equator, we experience more seasonal changes in temperature, seasonal changes in the way the environment flourishes around the other sentient beings and so forth, and what roles they take in and what energies that we may have more of or less of. The same thing with the amount of sunlight that we may have, depending on where we are. The exposure of sunlight decreases and so forth. So the body has to adapt and adopt accordingly. Now, original design was not quite that way, but it is the way it is now. So the body has a lot of capacities, which is not very common, as I said earlier, in other physical forms. Is there anything you wanted to share?
Mena's asking, what about nuts?
About what?
Nuts, if we can digest them, I'm assuming.
Well, again, we're not, that's still the body adopting and adapting because it's not from our natural design. So the nuts and seeds and, all of that stuff that even vegetables, it's less challenging for the bodies because you have to understand that the body, to extract, it has to be designed to be able to utilize those energies. Now, of course, the whole eating process. Now, I'm not saying drop everything, go to fruits. I'm saying allow yourself to pay attention to your body and make the alterations accordingly. And because as your body's changing, it will put more preference on one versus the other, and then eventually, a transition of some sort will occur. So the other thing is, like I was saying, we also adopt and adapt according to our environment, not only the climate here or anything of that nature, to the people we associate with. So, where on the planet we're born, and or where we, choose to play. Because what happens is we adapt and adopt the concept of what the collective in that area, the energies of that area, and then we start to create our experience more related as much as possible to the environment we're exposed. This is why family dynamics end up playing a very powerful role, because we either choose to adapt and adopt that part of it, or actually we are the ones that are actually creating a different environment so that they adapt and adopt accordingly on their own terms, and not the fact that you have to do it. So that's one other thing I wanted to talk about that we have the capability to. We also have levels of consciousness and expressions. What does that mean? That means that in a way, we have different levels of access of consciousness. Now, most beings, most other physical forms, activate or are utilizing the newest level of consciousness constantly. Every awareness, every access point is automatically integrated in their experience. It is not outside of it, and it does not adjust it. It doesn't go up and down. Well, I'm going to be in a dense state right now, and then I'm going to be in an elevated state. No, it's always in the current state that it has access to. So every experience, so if they're working at this level of consciousness and this frequency, that consciousness and that frequency, I'm going to change my color here.
Purple.
Got to have my purple. So if you're at this level of consciousness, what ends up happening, any other being, pretty well, as they introduce themselves to other experiences or they learn from other experiences, their level of consciousness, their vibration goes up. But it doesn't go back down. It basically terminates, well, it cuts off access. It doesn't go up and down. So they're not going to feel the same level of fluctuations, which we do. Look at it this way. We go visit our family and our consciousness will adjust according to them. You go to work, the same thing. You go with your immediate family at home or partner, it will vary. Depending on your emotions, it will vary. It will go up or down. You may be going through the awakening process as people talk about it, and then you're now expressing that with your community in certain groups, and then of course you go somewhere else and you connect with other people, and guess what? All of a sudden your consciousness, your accessibility, how you speak, how you act, and your authentic self goes down. So basically, you're fluctuating. You're going up and down, up and down, up and down all the time when we're talking about access of consciousness. So you can, your levels of consciousness and expression. What does the expression part mean? How you express it, how you communicate, how you represent to others, how you function, feeling good, feeling bad, not feeling that great, whatever it is. These again are all terms that I'm using so that we can associate or understand it. But at the same time, the way we express depending on our state of consciousness. So if we have an emotional charge and our consciousness goes down, our expression is going to be very different. It's going to be reflective more of that. So there's a beauty to that in a sense because it gives us variance and it also gives us an adjustment, and really in a way it serves. However, in our true state, that was not our really design. We weren't really able to, in our original design, but that was kind of plugged in as part of it later on. Now, bring a clarification is, there was already a specific design not to vary so much, because at the same time, you know, if we had the two channels, it would vary much less. Now that was programmed in our original design. But again, the usefulness of going back to a lower state or a lower frequency was something it didn't do very efficiently because it didn't bother to do so. It wanted to be more consistent. So that's one of the things we have plugged in. We can adjust the level of our consciousness, which we do all the time, depending on, even if watching a movie or being exposed to a pulse of energy comes in, it will alter our accessibility to consciousness. You go into a meditation and your consciousness access increases, or the level increases. Let's call it level. So your level increases, and your consciousness or accessibility at that point, and the way you express, how you feel, what's happening with your body itself starts to change. This is why a lot of people use the whole idea of meditating, because you quieten the mind and you don't go up and down, and you tune into yourself, and then you use that part of it to alter your expression physically and otherwise, and how you even choose to play. For example, when you feel really good, you're having a good day, what we call it that, we're having an exciting day, or whatever it is, or the fact you woke up feeling good, your way of expression, the way you access consciousness, your efficiency of how you maneuver through the dance of life, no matter what's playing out, is completely different and much more fluent and free and playful than it would be otherwise. So I wanted to mention that. The other thing that makes us quite uniqueable, another new word, uniqueable.
Yeah, that's probably a new one, honey.
Okay.
That one up too.
We need to make a dictionary that will be selling t-shirts with all these new words. Okay. Programmability, maintainabilities, and conditionable.
Programmability is a word. You just have it as IES, where you could just put a Y on the end.
Yes, but that makes it plural.
So does the other one.
Programmability is plural?
Yeah.
I got it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, go ahead.
Programmabilities. Many, many capabilities. Okay. Get to play with that. Okay, so programmabilities, maintainabilities, and conditionable. A few new words here. Anyways, what I wanted to say about that is that we, in a way, can program ourselves to have a variety of different experiences. Depending where you're born, what stream comes through, it programs not only our body, emotions, our thought pattern, what we utilize and don't utilize as operating system, and it's all in and part and parcel of how we become programmable. And we're very programmable. The media programs us. Education programs us. Most other beings have an operating system, have programs, but not programmable to the degree that we become programmable. Because we take on a program and we label it, define it, and we become it. Superseding our natural design, superseding our true essence, superseding our more authentic aspects of ourselves. And the same thing, maintainabilities, to be able to maintain it for a long period of time. And then the thing is, we maintain different channels of it. For example, you are programmed to play with the family one way. You program yourself to be with yourself, partners, so as you can see, and it goes on and on, different levels of family, different work environment, you name it. So we get programmed to become one of them. So it's part of the adaptability, but we get programmed, so it's automatic pattern. So you step in there, you become that person. You talk like them, you act like them, you now go into that mode. And you programmed yourself, when I'm there, this is how I work. These are my patterns, these are my defaults, these are my responses, this is my thing. And then you can maintain it so that you can go from A, let's take that out. You can go from A experience to B experience to C experience. And the thing is, what you're maintaining is the capacity to be able to, at this point in time, to automatically shift from this to this to this. So you're programmed at each of those levels of expression and experience. That's not very common. That makes a unique part of ourselves. Yes, some people can say it's annoying as hell, and it doesn't take us from our authentic self, but at the same time, it's been quite enriching, quite experiential on many, 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 many levels, and many, many different opportunities. So that's one of the parts. And conditionable, meaning that you can easily be conditioned to the point that our body gets conditioned. What we consume, we can condition. For example, you can be at home and eating roast. Body's totally not good with this. Forget it. Just change that. Okay? Saying okay, maybe once upon a time, whatever. However, you go to Thanksgiving, you go to a gathering, and now you expose yourself to the roast beef. Unless there's no other programs coming in, all of a sudden your body seems to be maybe not super okay with it, but it seems to be more acceptable of it. And it's more, okay, well, we're in this environment, we're going to play it, everybody else is holding that energy, we're going to harness that part of that energy, or we're going to harness part of that programming. So you go into default, and all of a sudden, in this environment, you've been conditioned to be able to eat roast, turkey, all the stuff you would normally not eat. Yeah, okay, your body might go on overload a little bit and so forth, depending on how much you indulge. But if you don't overindulge, you will notice it be able to do something that you wouldn't do in your, say, work environment or home environment. So that becomes conditioned. This is not common. And this makes other parts of unique abilities or uniqueness within our expression and experience. Is there anything you want to say? No? Okay. So, we can go on for hours. Yeah, but at the same time, we've got to keep moving. So these are some of the things that make us quite unique. I'm building on this for the fact of being super excited to be here on planet Earth, on this playground. And getting the look from the wife here. You're so lucky, I love you. Okay, upgrades it receives. It's constantly receiving upgrades. Now, of course, you could say some upgrades are negative, some upgrades are positive. Well, the uniqueness about all of that is that we're upgrading constantly and we're getting new codes and it's altering ourselves to be able to match with not only our body's state, our planetary state, our sentient being state, our solar system state, our galaxy state, and also our universe. As all those levels are going through upgrades and expressions and so forth, that we're being upgraded too. So a lot of us have been getting a lot of downloads and upgrades and so forth, upgrades in our functionality, operating systems, and so forth. And we're designed to be able to take those upgrades and to adopt and utilize it. The beauty of it, that it can store some of it as use for later, and some of it can activate right away, or can activate a part of it and then just continue to allow it to activate more and more. So that's what the programs are doing. So we're receiving upgrades. Now I know other sentient beings or other physical aspects of ourselves and other planets are also upgrading. But you know, the thing is, our upgrades are, in a sense, especially now, are huge, and they're actually not forced upon, but a part of you that's allowing it in now is allowing it to supersede its natural or what's the original design, where it would incrementally stage every part of it. Go ahead.
Okay, Catherine's asking, how does this serve us in our original design? The maintainability where we shift and shift and shift depending on the environment in the original blueprint.
Well, in the original blueprint, it allowed us to be able to, when we're talking about programmability, maintainability, and conditionable, is that wherever in the original blueprint, when we were having those experiences at that point in time, we adapt to wherever we were showing ourselves on the planet, because the planet had a lot of variance. And you know, since there was many different versions of ourselves at the time, so we would adapt. However, we've taken it to the next level, and we're just going to be bringing it back to its original design, where it's not hard and fast, because anything that we condition ourselves to now, like we're talking about anything that we program ourselves, we have a tough time letting go of the programs. The same thing as the main, you know, we've gotten on super steroids on maintaining, and the conditionable part of it is that we hang on to our conditions much more powerfully and a lot less receptive to let go of those conditions at this point in time. So our original blueprint provided us just variance and so forth. Now it's those variants were all stretched further, and now it's being brought back into alignment. So it gives us the capacities to be able to do it much more effectively. Go ahead.
Okay, Magalona, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly, but regarding food, wouldn't this mean for all of us to move to tropical countries where you would have access to fruits all year round?
Well, I mean, the thing is, eventually, as the changes continue, our environment has changed. Our environment was never the same, before the retooling. And that's been kind of proven by some scientists, but it doesn't get into what you call the mainstream education or anything of that nature at this point in time. But if you feel called to go to a warmer climate or a more tropical climate, the thing is, the harshness was never the case before. It was not programmed to be that way, because you have to understand it's not so much the sun that heats up the planet. It looks that way right now. It's basically the energies in the different stages along the way. So that will change, so that there will be more consistency with the climate. Now, will there be changes in the climate? There will be variants, but the variants are not like huge. The variants are more minimized, and so that in fact that we don't have to climatize ourselves to the same degree as we do now. If you feel that at some point in time you want to be guided to that, then you can go to where it's more tropical, but that's going to be more reflective. And I'm not going to be talking about tropical, because even the tropical part will become somewhat milder without having this super extremes, because even the tropical areas where the equator is and so forth, the levels of temperature at this point was not originally from the retooling time. That was kind of modified to be able to. And of course the fruits and everything else will adjust accordingly. So there's so much to talk about in just that alone. But yeah, just follow what you feel guided with yourself at this point in time. Some people are moving where it's a little bit more tropical because they can be closer to the food source, or you can call the food source that more supports our physical aspect of it. You'll notice that our bodies will do flourish with different foods. Now, because a lot of us have been conditioned and to be in the northern climates where you're away from the tropical environment, that our bodies adopted accordingly. But eventually that's already in the process now. We're going to still be drawn to it, and the movement of food will change, and the fact of using technologies until more of the transition happens to our planet, technologies to be able to grow more so-called tropical foods and so forth can be established even in what we call the more harsh climate. Those technologies already exist. There haven't been, they're not being rolled out at this point in time. And it goes way beyond the whole thing about greenhouses and things like that. It has some representation to that, but there's more to it that actually will allow it, because there's technologies that can grow by using certain frequencies and so forth to have all the elements it requires to grow in all types of environment that would be nurturing to our bodies anyways. Go ahead.
Just another question from Ripple Vortex. As long as things crumbling, are we easier to change those old patterns, programs, and systems, etc.?
Yes, absolutely, and that is part and parcel of what's going on. The crumbling, or what you call the crumbling, the intensities, the polarization, the big powerful waves that are going on, the destabilization of humanity's older patterns, is it starts to break down, which has been for a while now, and it's accelerating. The dropping of a lot of these programs and so forth will restore it back to its original blueprint, because all the stuff that's been imposed. So you say, okay, we have the capacities to do, to go from here to there, in this environment, but then all of a sudden we started to stretch it and so forth, and the variance has been much more. So with all this destabilizing, because all of this other stuff was artificial anyways, we're able to bring ourselves back to a capacity where we're in the range of the original design. Now, of course, there's going to be some upgrades anyways along the way, so it's not just, that's the way it is. There's going to be upgrades accordingly, because all of it is upgrading. The way, you have to understand, the sun is not hot. And it's just the way that the segments of the planet takes that frequency spectrum of light and turns it into heat. The same thing with our bodies. Our bodies are programmed. There are beings that are going in and out of the sun all the time with their ships and whatever else, and there's no issues. Well, because the fact is, the way they're programmed programmed or to encode those spectrums of light does not encode it as a byproduct of being heat or intense heat, and that's the thing with the planet. So, certain, for example, I'll give you some other. I didn't plan to talk about any of this stuff, but okay. So you have the equator here. So let's do this as the equator. The way it's set up right now, which wasn't the original setup, is that this is closest to the spectrum of light that's coming in, and it's reflecting as heat. And these are further away, so they reflect less and less heat, or taking those codes and turning it into what's heat, and then it changes the environment accordingly. The way it was originally designed is that each section of these areas further north as you were going, or further south at this point in time, was designed so it would use more percentage, a higher percentage of the light codes to produce what looks like heat. Okay? So here it would be, say it only took 10%. I'm just using this as an example. Oops. So 10%. This is the equator. Here it would probably take, say, 25% of those light codes. And this one may take 50% of those light codes. And here it may take even 100%. And this applies to down there too. So even though the level of light from the sun, or the degree of intensity of the sun, would vary along the way, then what it would do is that where it didn't need as much, it'd use less of it. Where it needed a little bit more, it would use more of it. And when I'm saying more of it, because it's already coming in what looks like weaker, and so forth. And there, even this distance doesn't become a factor at this point in time, because that was never designed accordingly. So in a natural design, you can have what would represent a version of tropical throughout the planet. Now, when I say tropical, like I was saying, the variations are going to go up and down in temperature change and so forth, but the variance is small, where you're not relying to go hiding somewhere because your body will also adjust accordingly to its environment. And, you know, needing to clothe and to wear heavy whatever at this point in time to be able to express and to feel comfortable in your environment or whatever it is not something that's going to be a necessity at that point in time. Because originally clothing was an option, if you want to call it that. It wasn't even as something that would be utilized anyways, because we were designed already to be able to adjust accordingly. Okay? All right. We got to get moving. I think that's all I had today. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go a little faster through this, a little quicker. The other thing that the body does very well, it maintains a very strong connection with Gaia. Okay. And its shapeabilities it has with Gaia. So it adjusts with Gaia most closely. Where? In most other planets, there is a level of communication, but there is still a difference, a pretty substantial difference between what the planet represents energetically and what the planet is going through versus the being that's occupying that physicality, or being that physicality. So you can take a Sirian, for example, or Pleiadian or whatever, just as an example. they stayed more integral with their own frequency and didn't take so much feedback from the planet. It was actually quite minimal in comparison to us. Ours is not. We take a lot of energy from the planet. But it's not only the planet, because Gaia also represents a tremendous amount of sentient beings. Now, the sentient beings are connected to Earth in most cases, but a lot of them are just in the environment. So we're taking a lot that actually, shapes the way we experience and the way we reflect accordingly. That's just a topic on its own. But at the same time, that's something that our bodies also have as a capacity to be able to be related both ways, receiving and transmitting. So our experiences are also shared, and it's shared to Gaia. So there's a strong connection back and forth. It's a two-way street, as they call it, or two-way path, energetically and code-wise, and the way its connection, vibrational and otherwise. But it also shapes us as we continue to shape the planet too at the same time. So it's the planet is much more adaptable and reflective of our state, and this is why our environment will alter accordingly, because of the fact that it will reflect it much more closely with Gaia. So there's a lot that's connected within ourselves that most other beings don't. So this makes it also very unique for ourselves. Of course, our telepathic was our original. Sound is very powerful. We do communicate through sound. But we also have telepathic communication, because with telepathic communication, we're able to be much more efficient. However, when we speak, sound is like music. Sound of our words and so forth actually help shape our environment. And this is part of source codes right from the beginning. So as much as telepathic capacities that we have of communicating, we also have what we call voice, sound, as part of the other ways of communicating. Now, what our natural design was, we were very, very telepathic, and we communicated the bulk of our information and everything telepathically, but then it was like a beautiful piece of art to be able to speak, to be able to change the vibration of the environment through voice, through the sound. This is why it's one of our chakras are connected to it. And so this wasn't the primary level of communication. This was the primary, but these were different ways of expressing and creating very much a very interesting, unique expression because of using sound. Does that make sense to you?
Say that again.
You're not supposed to make me.
Unique expression.
Yes, because like I was saying, the telepathic is our true design, and most of all. But then we added the voice and sound as a way of expressing and to shape the form around us, which made it very not only unique, but it also. I mean, every sentient being has sound. We just don't hear it all. But the sound is not through communication. The telepathic communication is the main part of it, and we're reactivating more of that, even though it's still there and it's still active. A lot of times we disregard it, and we just kind of made this as our default, and our reliance is to keep using only voice, sound, and words, what we call words, which is just sounds that we've identified as the words we've been throwing, identified that it has a representation of some sort of label. Go ahead.
But doesn't sound and our voices, they all carry a certain frequency and codes that can be beneficial as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Perfect. So that was always there. But the fact of communication was mostly telepathic. So yes, sound has a very unique, all of us have a unique Because if you even look into science that record people's voices and look at the patterns, everybody's voice is almost like a signature. It's always different because each one of us, that sound has a particular encodement, a certain frequency that actually, in a way, also creates other alterations, even though it's not mimicked the same, other alterations from other aspects of ourselves that are playing in the playground, but also in our reality. And the sound itself is also a very musical way of communicating that supersedes just communication. Now, the telepathic, of course, you can also see the vision of others' expressions so that you don't have to use as many words. So anyways, that's that part. We're self-learning. Pretty straightforward. We're able to learn for ourselves without learning from others. I know we create a dependency to learn from others, to say, well, okay, I need to study this or that. But we learn from ourselves, and that learning is the inputs that we receive, not only from our own body, from our human entity, from our soul, and also through our mind going through our third eye and so forth. And we're also learning from the field of source itself that's all around us. So we're self-learning, and that self-learning also gives us the opportunity to kind of design and reshape ourselves and take action in making modifications in our way of life. The other thing is compartmentalizable. That's probably a word, but it's probably not. Well, I don't understand why that red mark is there now, but it wasn't supposed to. I had cleared it out, but okay. Compartmentalizable. Basically, I covered that earlier in a sense where we are able to compartmentalize ourselves and become versions of ourselves using different levels of consciousness, different expressions, different ways of feeling, different ways of playing, and so forth, depending where we are on the planet, where we are in groups and clusters, or and so forth. And that's the thing, is that we can compartmentalize other aspects of ourselves too. We also can compartmentalize ourselves as the higher self, the lower self, as they call it. And we can be fully body, fully human entity, fully whatever in the expression of body, but using just broken down without merging it all. So we've been able to do that. Now, that was enhanced, but we're fine-tuning that a little bit more so that we're not going to rely on that as a big factor. We can play with unconsciousness. We can be totally unconscious, meaning that, hey, there's no other existence in ourselves. So we can play that role. We can take a very powerful conscious being and go and represent and play with what represents to be very unconscious. Very interesting to do. We can lose touch with ourselves. Very powerful way to do that. We disconnect. Most of us have lived a good chunk of our lives that way. Many of us are still playing with it to a certain part. Losing touch with self. Losing touch who we are. Losing touch the fact that we're this genuine being, and we start to relate with other people and start to shape ourselves and label ourselves accordingly based on who and what you're exposed to at this point in time. So you can lose touch. You definitely can play small. We've done that many lifetimes. On planet Earth, of course. We can play small. We know more. We can express more. We can experience more. But we can play very small as I'm just a small being. Not realizing that you are the totality of existence. And you are fully that totality. But we can play it as, we're just this little person. How many times have you heard from others and say, Well, what do you think I can do? It's just me. It's just small me, little me. So we can play small. Of course, lots of us right now are changing that or outgrowing it. And when I mean outgrowing, what I'm saying is that we're finding that it's not interesting any longer to play small. And the thing is, as much as the world will reflect to us, to play small is the safe space and not to be, a big presence. Many of us are finding it more and more difficult to do so. All right. We can let the ego, our past, our labels, our adopted ideas run our life. Cool, eh? We can use the ego, the past, the labels, adopted, me. The ego makes us, in one way or another, run our life under its own terms. Through stories, programs, belief systems, inverted matrix, inverted 3D, 2D, and so forth. The past, how many of us have built our life and can't let go of the past, and we keep referring to the past experience, past versions of ourselves, all of that. And we use it to shape our life. Now, I know all of this stuff is breaking down as we're going along, and we're doing it, and some have made some big inroads. But look at that uniqueness of it. Now, of course, a lot of this was not in the original design. But hey, some of the upgrades, we threw some of that in there to see how it was. Let's have some fun with this. Labels? What does that mean? I am such and such. I'm good, I'm bad. I failed, I succeeded. I'm a doctor, I'm a garbage man. I'm this or that, I'm whatever. We label ourselves. I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm a sibling, whatever. We label ourselves and we play accordingly. And it shapes our life accordingly. Yes, the compartmentalizable state of ours comes in, but at the same time, we're able to do that. We can adopt ideas. Let's come up with some idea of some sort and build our life around that. Now, that makes us unique in a way because, hey, if you want variance, flexibility for a period of time, but the thing is, a lot of times the adopted ideas are older ideas that are regurgitated or recycled or not even our own aspect of ourselves. It's another version of ourselves that's coming up. And of course, it runs our lives. We see it all the time. Look at our lives, how much we've shaped it, how we've directed it, how we've looked at every aspect of it because of using that. So that's something else we can do. The other thing is, we use only a small fraction of our mind power or physical capacities. Let's call it capacities. We use a very small amount. A lot of it got turned off. A lot of it got, made isolated for a period of time. Using our mind, the more powerful you use your mind, which is a supercomputer, super powerful computer that actually runs the matrix, because each mind operates a sequence within the matrix. This is why we create our reality through it. By using our mind, we can reshape, redesign, move things very quickly, very effectively. We access that interconnection and able to use any part of it and create instantaneously. It's amazing when we use our mind power. More of it, anyways. We're using a small part of it. And that's being reactivated, brought back online. Is it going to go 100%? Not anytime soon, because it would be very difficult to have the particular experience because of what we've created that's being dissolved at this point in time. But we will be using more and more of it, and many of us are using more and more of it. Now, the mind power also gives us access to a lot of level of consciousness too, and be able to take information from your body, human entity, and your soul, and be able to utilize it much more effectively and create your realities accordingly, and not with the same level, excuse me, of restriction that it had before. I'm running out of juice here. Okay, so that's the other thing. And physical capacities. Our body, besides repairing itself, can teleportate. I think that's an
Just teleport.
teleport. I like the Tate part. Teleport. Teleportation. Teleportate is my word. Able to do so much at this point in time, how it could actually reshape itself, modify, whatever else. In fact, that it doesn't even have to have any consistency of what it played before. So this is coming back online too, and how to utilize, because the other thing is, the other part of the physical capacities is that it can take the energy from the sun, the air, and whatever else, and create whatever sustenance and capacities to sustain our holographic expression, or what we call the physical body, without utilizing food and all of that stuff. Because that's the other part of what I was saying when we were talking about the world, is that, yeah, we're changing the climate, or experiencing different climates no matter where we're at, and creating more harmonious, or what we call aligned climates. But at the same time, reliance on food is not something that is part of what we're going to eliminate any requirement. And that's the physical capacities coming back more online, and able to use not only the food, will have a more intimate connection to whatever we're ingesting. And again, it's designed for fruit only as a sensorial experience, not as a sustenance. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
I have a couple things. So the telepathy probably won't be, someone's asking how long before that comes into play. 3D, organic 3D, by 2023. What are you thinking?
Well, it depends on us, because realistically, we already have it all in ourselves. How much are we going to start using it will depend on what state that you're in. So as you deprogram yourself and you become more back in alignment with your truer authentic or essence of yourself, as these older programs that actually minimize and disconnect us from us starts to get purged, then we'll start to utilize it. Yes, of course, the energy is coming in, and the movement from a collective scape is going to facilitate. But when we have to look at it, it's just a matter of seeing other people able to do it, that we start, hey, I want to try that and I want to do it. Because we all have it. It's all active to a certain degree. We don't utilize it, that's all. And yes, if we're talking about a timeline, well, it's available in Organic 3D, and it's available in Organic 5D. Organic 5D uses it a little bit more refined state than the Organic 3D. But because the Organic 3D wants to focus on having the physical aspect of it a little bit more, and may access a little less of it, but it's equally available. So along the way, what's happening is, as we get through the next couple of years or so, because we're going into 2023, then we're more, we've allowed ourselves to purge more of those limiting beliefs and programs and stories and ideas and so forth, and energies, that we'll be able to have more of that access. But then as we continue to evolve or expand or access more of that consciousness of the organic 3D and 5D, you're going to notice that it will be more available. So when we're going into it and you say, well, is it going to be commonplace? Yeah, by 2040, it's intended to be fully commonplace, to be able to utilize that, and with the freedom to use it to the degree we choose.
Okay. Ripple Vortex is saying teleportation doesn't mean mind or body. You meant both, correct?
Both, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have another quick question. Savannah has asked this question before, and I don't think we've ever gotten to it. So I'm just going to ask now. And she says, considering moving from California to South Dakota for political freedom reason, no lockdown, is this unadvisable with the food aspect? Here in California, so much restriction, not very desirable. Hard to figure out where to live with the greatest freedom, joy, desirable playground.
Yes, so the thing is, we have to understand different parts of the world at this point in time, and we're focused on the states right now. In different states, the clusters, the collective in those areas are going to reflect different states of being. Now, you may have been to California, you may have been in California for a while and have integrated through that life stream and, have felt comfortable or whatever was going on with that. However, you've been changing, and the polarization and everything else that in California, for example, has been changing, so there's more restrictions. Even though there's a higher level of growth capacity is increasing there. I'm not saying it's better than any other place. It's all going to be different, but also at the same time equally beneficial. But if it's pushing buttons for you and it's making you uncomfortable and so forth, you want to address all of that before you choose to move. But the thing is, be free to say, okay, well, this is not feeling much more natural, and the restriction is not something I want to continue to play with, even though you have a certain level of freedom of how you express and experience those limitations that are in California. You could say, hey, I don't resonate here anymore. I'm going to let this playground go for now and let them play out whatever they want to play out, and I'm going to go to South Dakota, like you said, and then you're going to go play there because those energies may support you much more where you're at, going through the process that you're going through. At some point you may feel, hey, I may want to go back to California or somewhere else, it doesn't matter, because whatever had to play out in the different states have changed. There are more people are moving at this point in time, relocating, because they're now open to certain restrictions or that cluster mentality or cluster energies of that collective, because every state in different segments have different collectives, and those collectives may want to play there in that density and go through those extremes of intensities, in the sense of being restricted or being feeling that you have no choice, so that people are reflecting very negative energies in a sense. Some may not, but others may. So just follow. If it feels for you conducive at this time, you don't have to make it permanent, saying, well, it's the end of everything at this point, now I'll never go back. You just keep it open. Right now, if one feels better for you because that's where you want to go to, then take the steps to go there. And it's going to you can't make a mistake. That's the beauty of it. So a lot of times we're getting nudges to move because it's time for us to move. And we, of course, have our ego resistance and program resistance. It's like, oh, we have a way of life here. We've lived there for a long time. The climate's nice. The food, access to food is much more because of its environment and whatever else. But then there's all this other stuff. But at the same time, you say, well, that feels great. I've been here, whatever it is. But then it's like, okay, it's time to move, okay? Now, you don't want to move because of fear. You don't want to move because, the restrictions really irritate you. So you want to work through those programs. But you want to move because, hey, it doesn't match me any longer. And you say, it's time to move. It's time to go somewhere else. It's time to explore, experience, whatever it is, in another environment, another playground with another cluster of consciousness there. So if that freer, less restricted state feels more conducive for you, then go for it. Is there anything else you wanted to share about that, Kimberly, about moving? Because I know you bring it up time to time too.
I think it's just making sure we're truly in alignment with it, and we're, like you said, not moving out of fear
or judgment.
We're just moving because it is the right thing. Our soul is nudging us, and maybe being open and looking for signs around what that would look like, signs that it's time to move, and because there would be no fear attached to it there would be no anxiety or anything. It would just be, okay, it's time to go. It's time for a change.
And the other thing is too, if you feel a change and you're being drawn to say, okay, I'm going to go to South Dakota, go visit it. Go spend a little bit of time there. Connect with the energy there, the people there, and so forth. If it feels like home to you for now, then that's another confirmation for you to go or not to go. So you want to stay in tune with that, because both of us at different times, separately and together, because we weren't always together, but at different times we've felt like, okay, you go there and it's like, yeah, this feels like home. You go somewhere else, even if it looks ideal and everybody else says that that's the place, you go there and it's like, it doesn't feel quite right. And I remember even with the moving from one place to another, you go to places and from a human viewpoint, from a program viewpoint, you're looking at it, it's got everything you need, the environment's good, the place is good, this is that, or whatever it is, but you go there and it's like, no. What's different? Well, the energies maybe of the area, maybe of where you're going is not conducive for you at that point in time. You will know, because that part of you is always communicating for you at this point in time to decide or to be directed where to go. So, and the other thing you have to keep, you can't make a mistake. So even if you move out there and you're only there for a short period of time and say, well, I got to go back to the other place, blah, blah, blah. I've seen it where kids have made a big fuss about moving, or a partner made a big fuss about moving, but then, when they tried it out, it felt like home. They go there for a period of time, and now, even though they were totally upset at first to go there, all of a sudden they love it and they don't want to move from there, or they want to, they feel really super comfortable there. And that happens too. Okay? Good? Okay. Last thing, emotions. What can I say about emotions? It's a full body engagement of any particular story, program, belief system, or experience. It's a state that is felt throughout your whole body. And I'm not talking about a body response. I'm talking about an energetic, emotional involvement that involves your whole body. Emotions can change the chemistry, can change how your body repairs itself. It can change not only how you feel in every aspect of yourself, but how emotions can make you feel with the environment around you. It changes so much. Now, emotions is not a commonplace. That was an add-on. But even though as an add-on from the human perspective, so it was part of the genetic encodements or the blueprint, so-called, emotions was not something that was added on later. It was put in its original design. But it's not kind of the emotions that we're experiencing right now. The emotions that we're experiencing right now is an accentuated, modified version that was not right from its original design. Emotions were to accentuate an experience. So if you had a certain state, you accentuated it, and it became more enriched. It became much more real, much more engaged. That's what the emotions were for, so that you engage the body in that experience, wherever that may be. So any exhilaration you had was like emotionally charged, to the point where you can feel it every aspect. It would change every aspect of what you were feeling and experiencing, even in the physical, and how you the way you would move. What modified 10,000 years ago is that the emotions were changed so that it actually took over. It took over our experience. So as you can see, emotions can very much so control how you feel, how you experience, what you respond to, what you do and don't do. The emotions, for example. Now, we didn't have polarized emotions. We basically had a free, open emotion. So if you have the emotions of fear, as an example, look at how many things that fear can promote you to do and not do. Fear can make you feel small, can make you play small, can make you hide, can create such inabilities within yourself. At the same time, fear can make you take action in a certain direction. Is it an alignment? It doesn't take that into discretion. It basically makes you react a certain way, take action because of the fact that it needs to try to get away from the whole idea of what that fear is, or what the idea that the fear is instigating at that point in time. So that's the modification. So this is being refined again. It's being brought back in alignment, the emotions, where it's an accentuation of an experience to give it a little bit more excitement and playfulness and so forth, and not really to drive your life. Now, it has the capacity to drive a small amount, even from the original blueprint, where you can express and experience that particular emotion to a certain degree, and some of the choices in that emotion would be participating, but not to the degree it does now. And that's the other thing. Was there anything else? Well, thank you guys again. Like every point that I cover, can be expanded, but I just wanted to give you an idea. So the recap here at this point in time is that we are phenomenal beings, first and foremost, in phenomenal bodies, on a phenomenal playground, because all of them are quite unique and quite a marvel in its design. And what you can experience here is not, on planet Earth, in this physical form, is not across the board the same. Even the stages we're going through right this point in time is providing opportunities and expressions and experiences that are not that commonplace. So you're here because you chose to be here to get this part of this ride and to catch the wave of everything that's playing out. Give yourself the permission to play, to experience this, and to move through it for your own upgrades. Let go what no longer serves. Integrate what serves. It's not about dropping the body. It's about aligning with the body, integrating the body, and all that it has to offer. The same thing of all the other parts is integrating all of it, because we have quite a blend here. Quite a blend and quite an opportunity. The opportunity, like I said, is phenomenal in many, many aspects, and especially now, more than ever. So go out and play, go out and experience, go out and be yourself. And again, if all of this resonates for you, it would be best to share with others. It would be best to like and comment accordingly. To subscribe if you're on certain platforms that you subscribe, or follow if you're on other platforms. That actually will ensure more, and of course the notification bell if there's one. It will ensure that at least you get notification as new ones come along. We are going to make some changes to the Advancing Consciousness series, because we're going to try to shrink it down so that they're not as long and a little bit more frequent, so that it doesn't become overwhelming. And of course, all the other stuff that we're working on that will be introduced shortly also. So stay tuned. Stay tuned on Facebook, stay tuned on YouTube, stay tuned on Twitter, and stay tuned on LinkedIn, all of the different platforms that we're on at this point in time. And I think we're also on Instagram once in a while. Somebody's posting there too, so that we reach more people. This is just information to stimulate. It's not for us, saying, well, we need to do this or whatever it is. But I'm just saying, we want to reach as many more people, because as more and more people go on board, or awaken more of themselves and access more of themselves, then we can go through these changes a lot more effectively and efficiently and quicker, so that we don't. And if it resonates for you, we're welcome for any contributions at this point in time. It allows us to stay focused on the work that we need to do, and all the other things that we're working on at the same time. So that's also in the description and possibly in the comment section too. That's it. Is there anything else? And I thank you for all the people that have contributed. Yet I haven't been able to respond because it's not only the contributions that is highly, highly appreciated, but at the same time, there's a lot of inquiries coming in through Facebook, through YouTube, through emails, through Messenger, through WhatsApp, through text messages, through emails, you know, whatever. There's so much coming in. We can't keep up with it, and you know, my attention has been kind of fragmented with a lot of other things that I had to do. So I am extremely, extremely behind. I am not ignoring anyone at this point in time. If we can, you know, cover it time to time, you know, go through it, we will. But at this point, thank you. So go out and play until next Tuesday.